Within the records of history, certain battles transcend time, not merely as clashes of armies, but as the ultimate tests of wills. Today, we journey back over 8 centuries to a moment when two legendary figures, kings in their own right, stood on the precipice of destiny. One, a warrior with the heart of a lion, driven by a relentless crusade to reclaim what he believed was sacred. The other, a noble leader, wise and steadfast, who defended his homeland with unwavering faith. This is not just a story of war, but a tale of honor, chivalry, and respect between two titans. Richard the Lionheart, King of England, and Saladin, Sultan of Egypt and Syria, two men who could not have been more different, yet were bound by a singular fate. Their names are etched into history as symbols of bravery, strategy, and a duel that would shape the course of empires. But what truly happened in those fateful years? What drove these two giants to cross paths, to engage in a battle that would become the stuff of legends? This is a story of war and peace, of conflict and camaraderie, of triumph and tragedy. Join us as we uncover the truth behind the legendary duel, Richard the Lionheart versus Saladin. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of the Crusades, where legends are born and heroes are forged in the fires of war. The battle begins now. If you're captivated by stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Ancient Perspectives for more epic tales of history's greatest figures and moments. Hit the bell icon to never miss an adventure into the past. In the 12th century, the Middle East became the epicenter of a fierce struggle between two of the world's most powerful religions, Islam and Christianity. The Crusaders, having established several states, had entrenched themselves deeply within the region's complex political landscape. However, the 1180s witnessed the emergence of a formidable Muslim leader who came perilously close to obliterating the Crusaders. As their hold on the Holy Land teetered on the brink of collapse, the leaders of Western Europe launched a third crusade to reclaim the sacred territory. Saladin, the brilliant commander who would go on to reshape the region, delivered a crushing blow to a united Crusader force at the Battle of Hattin in the summer of 1187. This devastating defeat left the Crusader states vulnerable and exposed. Town after town fell swiftly to Saladin's advancing armies, including Jaffa, Acre, Sidon, and Ascalon. Finally, in October 1187, Jerusalem itself succumbed to his power. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves through the Christian world. It is said that Pope Urban III died from the sheer impact of the news. Later that year, his successor, Pope Gregory VIII, issued a call for Third Crusade to reclaim the Holy City and recover the lands lost to the Muslims. Initially, the monarchs of Western Europe were slow to rally to the cause, but by 1189, 3 of the most powerful rulers had answered the call. Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, and one of the most formidable leaders of the medieval era, Richard the Lionheart, the King of England, who ruled over vast territories in France, and Philip II, the young and ambitious King of France. These 3 great monarchs united to face the legendary Muslim leader, Salahuddin Ayyubi, known in the West as Saladin. During the 1170s and 1180s, Saladin worked tirelessly to expand his domain, and by the onset of the Third Crusade, his realm encompassed Egypt, Syria, the Hejaz, Yemen, and parts of Mesopotamia, Palestine, and Libya. For a more in-depth look at Saladin's rise to power, be sure to check out the previous video I did on him. Frederick Barbarossa was the first of the Western rulers to set out toward the Holy Land. By mid-1190, his imperial forces had reached Anatolia, where they engaged the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. After defeating the Turks in battle, they even managed to sack their capital, Konya. However, the campaign's momentum came to a sudden halt in June 1190, when the Holy Roman Emperor tragically drowned in a river in southern Anatolia. This unexpected event caused much of his army to retreat, though a determined contingent continued onward to the Holy Land. Meanwhile, Richard and Philip were slower to depart. They finally embarked on their journey in mid-1190, choosing a naval route. Both monarchs lingered in Sicily for nearly 6 months, not resuming their voyage until March-April 1191. On his way to the Levant, Richard was forced to stop in Cyprus. After a conflict with the Byzantine governor, Richard seized control of the island. Richard finally reached the Holy Land in June 1191, arriving 3 weeks after Philip. By this time, the city of Acre had been under siege by the Crusaders since 1189. With the combined might of Philip and Richard's armies, Acre fell in July 1191, marking a crucial victory for the Crusaders. Just as it seemed the Crusaders were gaining the upper hand, disaster struck once again. Internal conflicts erupted between Richard, Philip, and Frederick Barbarossa's son, Leopold. The leaders clashed over how to divide the spoils of war and who should be crowned the king of Jerusalem. Richard favored Guy of Lusignan, while Philip and Leopold supported their relative, Conrad of Montferrat. Frustrated by these disputes, Philip and Leopold decided to leave the Holy Land, although they left behind troops and funds to support the Crusaders. Following the fall of Acre, Saladin and Richard attempted to negotiate a prisoner exchange in the summer of 1191, but the talks took a disastrous turn. As negotiations dragged on, Richard grew convinced that Saladin was stalling and, in a brutal display, ordered the execution of nearly 3,000 Muslim prisoners within sight of Saladin's army. In retaliation, Saladin commanded the execution of more than 2,000 Christian captives in Damascus. Determined to keep up the pressure, Richard set his sights on the city of Jaffa, which was under Ayyubid control. His strategy was bolstered by the fact that his ships could track his movements along the Levantine coast, providing support and supplies. Richard's plan was sound, especially since his troops maintained strict discipline and held their formations tightly. For Saladin, attacking the Crusaders head-on would have been suicidal, so he waited for the perfect moment to strike. As Richard's forces marched toward Jaffa, Saladin shadowed and harassed them, biding his time. Finally, in September, he saw an opportunity at Arsuf. The two armies clashed in a fierce battle, but Richard's Crusaders emerged victorious, inflicting heavy losses on Saladin's forces. With this decisive victory, Richard pressed on to Jaffa, swiftly capturing the city. With much of the Levantine coast now under Crusader control, Richard held a strong position. Up to this point, the Third Crusade had been largely successful. By the end of 1191, Richard was poised to target the ultimate goal, Jerusalem. Even as military preparations intensified, both Richard and Saladin kept the door to negotiations open, though little progress was made. Richard's forces advanced to within 12 miles of the Holy City, but harsh weather conditions forced them to abandon the campaign temporarily. Instead, they captured Ascalon, a crucial city along the supply route between Saladin's territories in Syria and Egypt. Throughout the spring of 1192, minor skirmishes occurred while negotiations between the two sides dragged on. In April 1192, a shocking event occurred. The newly crowned king of Jerusalem, Conrad of Montferrat, was assassinated by the Hashashins, a mysterious group of killers. The identity of those behind the plot remains controversial, and the incident would later cast a shadow over Richard's reputation. In June, the Crusaders made another attempt to capture Jerusalem, coming within sight of the city walls. But once again, they withdrew without attacking, this time due to internal divisions among the Crusader leadership. Richard, however, had other pressing concerns. Back in England, his younger brother John was conspiring against him with the help of the French king Philip. As Richard debated whether to return home, Saladin seized the opportunity to strike. He launched a surprise amphibious assault on Jaffa, storming the city from the sea. Though initially driven out, Saladin refused to concede and ordered a counterattack. However, his forces were repelled and Jaffa remained in Crusader hands. This would be the final significant action of the Third Crusade. In September 1192, Richard and Saladin agreed to the Treaty of Jaffa. The terms established a 3-year truce. Saladin would retain control of Jerusalem, but Christian pilgrims would be granted access to the city, and Ascalon would be returned to Saladin. 6 months later, Saladin passed away. Meanwhile, on his return journey, Richard was captured and imprisoned by Leopold of Austria, the same man he had fought alongside during the Crusade. Leopold sought revenge for Richard's alleged role in the assassination of his cousin, Conrad of Montferrat. If you're captivated by stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Ancient Perspectives for more epic tales of history's greatest figures and moments. Hit the bell icon to never miss an adventure into the past.